Bengaluru's very own supremely talented singer, actress, composer, and songwriter, Vasundhara Das is an artist who brings passion and excellence in all that she puts her energies into. Her collaborative musical journey into the works of the Sufi poet, Hazrat Shah Hussain, has been avidly followed by all of us. In conversation with her is Akhila Krishnamurthy, founder of Alap.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. Hi, Vasundhara. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, although in honesty, we've talked so much already, but I'm really looking forward to, for the longest time, we've known you as a musician, actor, composer, songwriter, performer, but really you wear more hats than people know. And yours really has been a journey of a slow and a very steady transformation. With music, obviously, at the core of everything that you do. So when I was thinking about it last night, based on what we talked, it's really the story of movement from a performer to a facilitator, from a creator to a seeker, from the singular to the collective, from entertainment to the experiential, from performative to collaborative. Really also based, again, on our conversation, it seems like the universe seems to have conspired to make these shifts possible, really allowing you to change the lens of your perspective in terms of your music, in terms of the poetry, in terms of the philosophy, in terms of people, and in terms of life itself. So what would the Vasundhara in the now tell the Vasundhara that we all sort of, know from, the high-octane performer, the actor on screen? What would you tell yourself, the Vasundhara in the now and the Vasundhara then?
I think that I would tell the Vasundhara of the past to stay steadfast and keep the faith, and that, the world comes around into a full circle, and that, the things that you usually collect along the way on the journey always find a place in your journey ahead.
Right, absolutely. So, we decided to call this session, title this session, In the Flow, because so much of what you do today is really about flow. And it's about being in the moment and really drawing from that moment and sharing it with the larger universe without ever really feeling the pressure of having to dress it up. Why is flow really so crucial, Vasundhara, for you about both being and living?
I think it's about, this phase that I'm in right now where I live literally in the moment. And the flow has come into play because everything that I've done on the way here has really found a very poignant place in what I'm doing now. And for those of you who don't have a clue about what I'm doing now, it's, I facilitate people into experiential musical journeys, whether they're, groups at work or, elderly, or groups with neurodiverse conditions. So the core for me is to use my strengths, which is musicality, voice, singing, rhythm, all of that, and facilitate people to their optimum musicality or their optimum point of self-expression, which happens to be, the metaphor of music. Right. So,
and you believe there's music in everyone, like everyone?
Yeah.
Right?
If you have heartbeat, you have rhythm. If you have rhythm, you're musical. We're all musical beings. We're vibrational musical beings. We resonate with each other. That's why we're social. And the very fact that we collect in groups like this is because of, the fact that we resonate.
Yeah, like shared energy, right? Vasundhara, I was also thinking about how being in the flow is really about also being vulnerable. It's about, in a certain way, letting your guard down, right? And vulnerability is also about courage, right? When did that transformation happen for you? Because as an actor, as a performer, one is always wearing a mask, right? we're all never letting our guard down. You know, I've had the privilege of interviewing you as a journalist when Shakalaka Baby was released, right? It was a very different kind of interview. We were both in very different spaces in our lives, and I'm so happy this is happening. But how did this transformation happen for you?
You know, there came a point in my career when I was performing that I woke up one morning and I felt like I was singing the same song again and again and again. And I think that was a point where I really needed for it to mean something more. It always needed to mean something more because, you know, when you're occupied with something like music or poetry, the journey is really quite deep. It's quite introspective. But then here I was in the world of entertainment where it's very different. The ask is very different. The music is very different. And so years later, I think I was done. And I was like, you know, what can I, you know, how can I bring back the magic of why I began doing this in the first place? And that's when my then partner, now husband, had just gone to this life-transforming workshop in Hawaii with our teacher, Arthur Hull,
Right.
who's the founder of the modern drum circle movement.
Right.
If you don't know what a drum circle is, come to MG Road on the third Sunday of the month and drum with us, and you'll know. So, you know, I showed up at this workshop, and it completely changed everything. It turned everything I knew on its head.
Right.
Because when you're a performer, when you're an actor, or when you're performing to an audience, the mindset is really different. You're on stage, the audience is passive, you're performing to them.
Right.
Or at them. But here was a great sort of methodology that was thrown at me of where my audience could be performing with me. So it could be a much more collaborative, interactive experience.
Yeah.
And this was really not a class on how to perform. It was a class on how to build community.
Right.
It was a class on how do you use something as basic and sort of accessible as rhythm to create communities and to change the way people think about themselves and, you know, facilitate transformation. And so when I came back and I started performing, I found that it had entirely changed everything for me. The way I was on stage, the way I interacted with my, the musicians that were collaborating with me on stage, and also the way that I was taking my audience along with me on that journey. And I think I haven't looked back from there.
Yeah.
And since then, the focus has shifted from performance to collaboration.
Right.
And to interaction.
Right.
Which is so much more rewarding.
Absolutely. But like I asked you, Vasundhara, the whole idea of courage, like sort of free yourself from how are people going to be accepting of this performer who overnight decides to make this shift from singing to versus singing with, right?
So I think, we somehow inhibit ourselves, sometimes not of our own doing, sometimes of the doing of others. Sometimes we're just talked down to about something that we really feel passionately about. And that creates a kind of a resistance towards something that we might have really loved doing, but there's a barrier there now. So for me, that barrier was about being in the moment. You give me a tune and a melody and lyrics and all of that, and I can sing it like that. But here, the journey for me from the stage to the facilitation point in the center among everybody else was that of
multiple things.
Relearning, first unlearning,
Yeah, unlearning, yeah.
relearning, and then making that journey from here to there was about shedding my onion.
Yeah.
And the toughest one to shed really is the ego.
Absolutely.
Because if you're a musician, you've been studying music, you've kind of gotten to a point where you think you're okay, you're good.
Yeah.
Good enough to be up here. singing to someone or
Right.
performing to someone. So one had to really let go of that and then walk down in absolute humility to the center, and that center point was a point of service and not a point of performance or self-appreciation or,
Right.
whatever. So this journey was a really transformative one. It took a lot of courage, like you said.
Yeah.
I don't know where I got it,
Yeah. No.
but it
I think
kind
it
of
happens to, at different
Yeah,
points in
so-
our lives, yeah.
So at that moment, it's terrifying because on stage for me, it was my sweet spot,
Yeah.
right? My comfort
Comfort,
zone.
yeah.
Then everybody else is a little far away from me. You don't see all of me. You see some of me, what I want to show you. But then when I'm down there in the center, you see all of me with all my vulnerability.
Right.
And I don't know everything there
Yeah.
because every time I'm there with a different group of you, you're different.
Right.
And I have to feel you. And I have to take what you give me, your
Yeah.
energy, and I have to transform that into something else that I can give back to you.
Right. So it's also like a deeply spiritual sort of journey in some way. And
Yeah.
has it changed the way you also live your life? I mean,
Most definitely. Now, I wake up in the morning and it's not about myself. It's about how I can serve that group at that moment in time. That's the question that's resonating all the time. And also it's about how much can I make the experience for everyone in the room that much richer. What can I do to make it?
right,
So it's a different mindset.
right. Vasundhara, do you remember any story where, you've been part of the drum circle and this one particular, anecdote that sort of that keeps coming back to you in terms of how powerful it was, or are there really many stories? Is there one that you could share with us?
One really powerful, story is that of a person that was walking by on MG Road, right here in Bangalore. We can identify with this. He'd lost his job and was too, he couldn't go home. He didn't want to show face. And he came to the boulevard on MG Road to kind of contemplate on whether life was worth living. And then he walked past us. We were drumming, about 250 of us. We were singing, we were dancing, we were celebrating our presence there. And then he said, okay, I'm just going to sit down here and see what's going on. So he sat down, someone handed him a drum, he started playing, he started singing with us. 2 hours later, he got up and he came and he seeked us out and he said, I want to share something with you. And he said, I came here trying to think about whether life was worth living and should I, end it? How should I end it? All of these things. And then I came and drummed with you. And at the end of 2 hours, I feel a little silly. And I feel like it wasn't really as bad as that. I don't know why I was thinking about such a drastic step. That was it, that
Absolutely.
day for us.
That's
it
the
was like,
biggest validation, yeah.
isn't it? And then another day we're drumming, we're just generally having fun and drumming. It's really good fun. There was a transgender person walking by. Felt comfortable enough to walk in and dance with abandon in the center of all of us, singing and drumming and all of that. It's a celebration of
Yeah.
life. How many times do they get to do that?
Yeah,
We're,
absolutely.
they're so separate in their existence from the rest of us. So these are like really poignant happenstances
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
we don't know are going to happen there. But they do, again and again. Street kids sitting next to billionaires, drumming and sharing that moment of, that
Yeah.
spontaneous interaction, using music as a medium,
Yeah.
no words necessary,
Yeah.
so.
So in a certain way, apart from the whole idea of bringing the community together, this is also sort of a great leveler, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like an equalizer, yeah. Speaking about poetry, Vasundhara, I want to talk to you about your, your fascination with the poetry of Hazrat Shah Hussain. You've already released an album, and I think you're on to the next.
Yes,
Would you like to talk about also your, what about his poetry just draws you in? So, yeah.
So from the point of view of a musician, it's rhythm. When you identify with the rhythm of a poet and can compose music to their, rhythm and rhyme,
Right.
that's what is most resonant to us as musicians, as far as poetry is concerned. And of course, the relevance of what's written.
Yeah.
And I felt going through, and this is something that Mukhtiar Ali and me, we sat together, we knocked heads, and we said, what do we pick? Whom do we do? Sufi poetry across poets? Do we do this? When we were talking about the project, he said, no, I feel that we should work with the works of Shah Hussain because like a whole lot of Sufi poetry that's there, it's very relevant, even in today's world. And we need to approach it musically in that way, that it has to be relevant musically also in a sense and not be too traditional.
Right.
That was really sort of, he was also looking for that, I was looking for that we should have an element of traditional, but we should also
be
have
relevant to the world that we live in.
a modern take on it musically.
Yeah.
So it really lent itself beautifully to, where we both were as artists at that moment when we started working on it.
Right. Vasundhara, I'm curious, when you create music from poetry, what is the process? Like, do you engage with the poetry over and over again in a way that you internalize it and then it's sort of, but then you also, as a musician, you have to add your own sort of, imagination, interpretation. So is it really, does it become an extension of the original poet's work? How does that work?
I think that, the words do a lot of the work already because, when you're composing around words, you want to make sure that it is kind of embodying what the words are saying. So the words dictate quite a lot the direction, the musical direction in which we want to go. And of course, beyond that, it's also the rasa.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, the words dictate that, right? Because you have to go with what the words are trying to portray. So, a lot of it flows from the words into the rasa, which then, then you decide whether you want to go with raga, you don't want to go with raga. You want to be totally modern, do you want to be...
Right. And is it always a very slow, unhurried sort of process?
Can't really say. Sometimes it just clicks. A set of words just trigger a melody, trigger a musical expression, whether it's like, an instrumentalist playing something or you, or it really depends on a lot of things, on the words, on the moment, on the mood.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the second album going to be about? Are you collaborating with someone for that?
Well, definitely want to do some more work with Mukhtiar Ali.
Fantastic artist, yeah.
Yes, it has been an amazing journey, and he's like a brother to me.
Yeah.
We embarked on that journey together, and I definitely want to work with him on the second innings of that.
Right.
We have sort of shortlisted a bunch of poems, so it's just a question of when.
Right. So when you read poetry, Vasundhara, is there any particular type of poetry that you're drawn to, that you resonate with,
I actually like to watch poetry being read.
Okay. We just heard one section,
yes. I am really affected by deaf poetry. Have you? So there is, deaf poetry is where performers perform their poems. So as a performer, that's really exciting to me because I'm looking...
And where did it originate from?
I think from New York.
Okay.
Or the Bronx and those, areas. So people have taken it from there, and then it's kind of come into its own in different languages and things like that. But there are some really incredible poets that perform their poetry, like Suhair Hamad, who's my favorite poet. She talks about, she's from Palestine, and she talks about, oppression, and she talks about how, her identity is really the most important treasure that she carries with her, even though she lives in a different country. And she talks about war. I feel that poems are such powerful vehicles to convey the happenstance of time. And it's been proven again and again and again that they live way beyond the years of their creators. And that's why poetry is just, so important.
No, for sure. I mean, that's why we're all here, raising a toast to poetry. Vasundhara, last night we were talking about Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, which is really a book that speaks about the importance of deep diving and singularly pursuing what we do, and sort of making that almost like a rigor, right? And when I talked to you about the book, you told me about how, in a certain way, the work that you do is deep work. Would you like to talk about that? You talked to me about the pandemic, and I'm curious for everyone to, hear that story, and also about your journey as a sound healer, right?
Yeah, so during just before the pandemic hit, I had taken a course in sound healing.
Okay.
And you asked me a very important question yesterday about what's the difference between sound and music.
Yeah, sound and music, yeah.
As musicians, we get so caught up in the beauty of the musical sound that we forget that there's a whole world out there that doesn't necessarily always resonate with musical sound. When you think of pain, physical pain, when you fall, I don't know too many people that make a pitched musical right? So what really slapped me in the face when I went to this workshop was, it's okay to not have to always be in tune or in melody, and to create sound that is ugly, that's not necessarily pretty, beautiful. So for me, that, again, was like this huge challenge that I was faced with, because I was just always, if I was sitting in a session and everybody was chanting Om, my attention was getting drawn out, usually by the one person or the two
always
people
happening to be.
that are not in tune. And that's not why I was there, right? I mean, I have to be more accepting of any sound to be in that place as a sound healer. So, that's just one of the challenges that I faced during that period. But actually what it did was it sent me down a rabbit hole into vocal sound. There's a whole world out there, Nada Brahman, that has been incredibly researched for thousands and thousands of years in India, about how we can heal ourselves just using our own internal medicine of music, which is our voice, or sound, which is our voice. And so these 2 years I found were, not to take away anything from the pain or the sorrows of all the things that we experienced during these 2 years, but for me, it was a gift of time, where I was able to get into this deep dive, and just dwell in that place where, things that I had taken for granted came up, about music, about sound, about the voice, about how we resonate with it, how is it our own internal stream of healing or of therapy, or, how does it affect us in different ways, which is not something that I ever had time to do when I was, running from airport to airport, performing to different audiences.
Right.
So
Also frees us of judgments, right?
yes, this particular thing that I spoke about, where
Yeah.
you know you you accept your ugly sound.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Your own.
Oh, your own. Yeah, absolutely. I just have one question, Vasundhara, before, it's really like you've been taking music to so many different spaces and people, children, kids at risk, elderly with Parkinson's and dementia, caregivers at hospice and differently able people. Some really have no training or idea of music. What is the magic of making music in the moment?
The magic is when everyone, whether they're musical or not, or they deem themselves musical or not, because everyone's musical, begin to realize that they're actually entraining, and they're actually making music together, and they're actually collaborating. They don't know how they got there. That's the magic.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Vasundhara. I'm going to, I think we have a little surprise in store for everyone. So I'm going to leave the stage and I'm going to request Vasundhara to invite her musician.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to invite my colleague and friend, Hemant Divakaran. A place than this, than you, to share maybe the first song that we have from the second volume of the Shah Hussain project with. So I hope you'll be kind. It's the first time we're doing it on stage. So. Can you, yeah. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਕਾਈ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਭੁੱਲਿਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਕਾਈ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਭੁੱਲਿਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਕਾਈ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਭੁੱਲਿਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਈ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲੋ ਕਾਈ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਭੁੱਲਿਆ प्रेम पियाला सतगुरु वाला पीवत है मैं झुलिया रूप नयना पीपत वाला पीवत ही मैं झुलिया लोक लाज कुल की मर्यादा डाल सजन बल छलिया लोक लाज कुल की मर्यादा डाल सजन बल छलिया तुसी पई न भुल्लो तुसी पई न भुल्लो तुसी पई न भुल्लो तुसी पई न भुल्लो काई जे मैं भुल्लिया तुसी पई न भुल्लो काई जे मैं भुल्लिया Thank you. Can you lessen the reverb a little bit? Too much reverb? Check, check, check. Check. I want to leave you today with one of my favorite poems that was put to song, which is why it's so special for me. It's by a poet called Serrat, and it's called Poema de Amor. Poema de Amor means poem of love. El sol nos olvidó ayer sobre la arena. Nos envolvió el rumor suave del mar. Tu cuerpo me dio calor, tenía frío y allí en la arena, entre los dos nació este poema, este pobre poema de amor para ti. Mi fruto, mi flor, mi historia de amor, mi caricia, mi humilde candil, mi lluvia de abril, mi avaricia, mi trozo de pan, mi viejo refrán, mi poeta, la fe que perdí, mi camino y mi careta, mi dulce placer, mi sueño de ayer, mi equipaje, mi tibio rincón, mi mejor canción, mi paisaje, mi manantial, mi cañaveral, mi riqueza, mi leña, mi hogar, mi techo, mi lar, mi nobleza, mi fuente y mi sed, mi barco, mi red y la arena. ¿Dónde te sentí? ¿Dónde te escribí? Mi poema. Thank you.
God knows what. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful session of going from the performance of art to becoming a vehicle of art, from teaching us about the sacredness of the discordant note and the unfolding of co-creation. What a beautiful exchange and what a beautiful presentation. I think we'll just leave the room for 30 seconds of silence just for us to savor it still. Thank you.